Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds. And in this episode, I'm going to put the seat frames for both rear and back together using epoxy and silicon bronze screws after they've been sealed in Smith's CPS. And some of them are even getting some stain and varnish because it shows when the final product. And I'll show you how I did that. So let's get to work. Now that I have the front seat rebuilt and dry fitted, the only thing I haven't put in are the bolts that go in here. And then I've discovered when fitting this into the boat, like how did it not tip over backwards and stay still? Well, then I started looking around thinking, what creative way did the builder fashion to hold the seat in place? Most builders, they sit in place like the rear bench. Usually they just sit down because there's no pressure back and forth. They just sit with the pressure of the person and the seat, the weight. Front seats are usually fastened. Well, this one, I thought, well, maybe they drove screws down through. Well, you can't because there's a cushion on there. So there's no way they could have ever gotten it out if they had to. This ingenious builder ran bolts through these supports, which I wondered why they were there. It supports the frame, but also it serves as a pass-through for a bolt. So a bolt goes in through here and then inside of the seat support, which is a vertical upright, and then you just put a wing nut on. So that allows you to drop the seat in, it fits tightly. Then it secures it so it doesn't tip over backwards or frontwards. So really interesting. So I'm going to replicate that in the back because I have no back seat bench. I have to just go with what the builder did at the front and make it work. The bench seat in the back is several inches wider because the boat is getting wider back there. So I went ahead and made this wider, this wider, this wider. These are the same size. So this was easy. Replicated his half lap construction. Put a half lap in these. They didn't sit well originally, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to make them sit better. And then, even though this one has a back, it's almost like I guess you'd call it a courtesy panel. It's so that you don't see the back of the bulkhead or the seat supports if you're sitting in the rear cockpit. And I wasn't sure exactly what that was, why it looked so bad. And then I noticed there were small holes where they had put down a piece of plywood as like a courtesy panel. And I will replicate that as well. I have to put it back in and then I'll measure it with the floorboard to make sure it's just right. And then it'll have a really nice look as you're looking forward at the back seat. And I'm not sure it'll be upholstered, probably, so it'll match the seat back, which does come off. It'll match it. So I'm going to go ahead and start making parts to replicate this, except I'm not going to do anything with the back because there's no back. It just sits in place. There's no fastening. So I'm going to go ahead and just replicate this bit in a wider fashion, same depth, cut the plywood to fit, and I will have a pretty good seat to start with, and then I'll fine tune it to some of the bevels in the back. Back to work. So that completes the building of the new rear cockpit bench seat, largely based on what I found in the front, but wider and doesn't have obviously the supports. So I've sanded this down and it's ready to be disassembled again and then epoxied on all the joints. I'll do that with the front seat too. There's just enough, I need to have the integrity of the glue and the screws to really make this feel solid under the passengers, and then the upholsterer will obviously cover all of this. I'll seal it in Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer, as I will the other seats. They're all covered in upholstery, so no one will see in it, so there's no paint. The problem I am finding, while this is the original back, um, it's a little bit smaller than I would like. I like it a little tighter to the bottom of the inside combing to make it look nice. And it's warped. I mean, it's 1/4 inch, which is very thin. It isn't even 3/8. So I have some more marine 1/2 inch, which I used on the bench seat for this to get a little more height. And because of the extra width of 10 inches, I wanted more strength. So I did 1/2 inch here, and I'm going to redo this and a little bit taller out of the 1/2 inch because this is okay. It's just too floppy and it's not sitting correctly against the rear deck beam, which also serves as the landing point for this, is not happy with it. So I'm going to redo this, custom fit it so it's a little bit nicer fit, and yeah, all of the seats were then thrown away. There wasn't much I saved, unfortunately. But I had a good pattern, and I'm thankful for that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a new piece for the back, and then I'm going to put this in place, and we'll see how the seats look. I have both the rear and front seats completed. The dry fit is done. I've sanded them, and now they are ready for disassembly. And then I will do Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer, CPS, uh, on all the parts. And then I will put them all back together using Smith or using epoxy with a thickener because they're really strong. I'm really confident. There's joints though that have a lot of areas that don't have enough surface for even a screw. So I'm going to use, the old suspender belt technique, do the epoxy on the joints, and then I'll put the silicone bronze fasters back in, and I will have a super secure seat for the upholsterer to cover. This seat gets covered front and back, and then the rear seat just they get cushions, and then they wrap around the fronts and the back, and they staple. And those come out. Those are meant to be taken out so you can access the gas tank and other things in the aft area of the boat. This sits on 2 heavy-duty supports, and then there are pins that run through that to keep the driver from tipping over backwards. So you can take this off, but it's not meant to be taken off very often, if at all. So I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this, and then go ahead and spend some time putting Smiths on all the parts. Before I can put these backs on the front seat, I need to stain the inside, because you'll be able to look through the small compartment opening that allows you to put in any item behind the front seat. You'll see that. So the owner would like to have that be stained and varnished before I put the seat together and send it off to the upholsterer. You could have put white paint, you could have put the vinyl that he chose on that just so it looks uniform, but this will work as well. It's very common to see the inside of these varnished. A lot of them are open. This one has a little cubby hole cut into it. So I'm going to go ahead and use, I love using Lake Oswego Boat Company gel stain. This is the red, this is post-war Chris Craft, which is pretty common in the boats I work on. So what I did, I'm just going to paint it on with a chip brush. You don't want to use an expensive brush. And I usually work it two ways, just like I would varnish. And by the time I get done with this panel, I'm going to have, it's going to start to dry. So I'm going to just go ahead and get at it. And then when this goes back on, it'll all be done. And when this is done, I'll put on a sealer and pet it. That'll lock the stain in and protect it. And then when I go ahead and do the backside with the Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer, because I want all the seat frames and backs to be sealed, because there's foam against it. It's going to get wet. You just should assume it's going to get wet, and humidity and things like that. So everything's going to be sealed, and this boat will have a lot of longevity in its seats, at least. Of all the things that didn't make it through the years of storage and bad storage were the seats. So it's really important that I get them stained, sealed, and ready for the upholstery. Now that I have the stain on and it's starting to dry, usually the timing is perfect. You're going to do a panel this size or a deck this size, a patch like this, and it'll start to dry. So you just take a clean cotton rag. I don't use paper towel because it has a tendency to leave fibers, that it's just breaking down. So a clean cotton rag, an old t-shirt is my go-to. And what you want to do is just rub it, and you'll start to see the grain come through, which is what you want. Otherwise, you just have paint, and stain is just, it's paint that's been thinned out, and you have to give it even more thinning. If you want to be able to see that expensive plywood. And even though this is a kume, it doesn't have the grain like Sapele does, or even some of the old Akume. The ribbon stripes are gone. It is quite nice, and you can just see the grain coming through. So I will put that one aside, and when my rag gets too saturated, obviously it's not working. This one's still pretty good. I just do my other panel. This process also removes the hairs that might be left from the chip brush. And what I'm looking for is just areas that didn't get the stain in them. Even plywood, the grain sometimes is deep enough. Right, I have to make sure everything is done. Because once you get this done, the last thing you want to do is have to go back, touch up the area where the grain didn't get done. I'll even go around the edge here. Why not get it all? Even though this is going to be covered for the most part, this area in the middle will be the focal point. That's where the light will shine in when you're at a boat show, and people will go, oh, it's nice that that's finished on the inside. This boat originally didn't have any stain on it, except in the bilge, which for some reason. So it's nice that this have a finished look on it. And you have to be careful, make sure you're wiping, like I noticed a line here where it was getting a little saturated. So make sure you got all your glove prints off, and those are ready to go. I'll let those dry for at least a day, and then I'll put the sealer on with your rag. Always make sure you hang that up. This has got solvents in it, so I'll hang this on a rack or on the edge of my wastebasket so it's nice and stiff when I go to throw it away. I always keep my rags with solvent on them drying out until the day I take it to the trash, and then I know for sure that I've done what I can. And because this in the summer or something, this, if it's in the right place, a dumpster out in the heat in a black garbage can, it will combust and burn. So, and I've seen that happen. You don't want to do that. So take care of it properly. So I'm going to let these dry and move on to another project. I'm on to putting the front seat frame back together. This is the bottom, and I've already gone ahead and put my unthickened epoxy in the joints on both ends, both in the joint and on the piece going down. The the wood has been sealed with Smith CPS, so there's going to be very little absorption, and I saw that immediately. So I'm going to still do it because you never know. And so we've got the bottom frame together. The only thing not in here are the alignment. Uh, there's these two pieces of alignment boards that go in for the seat. I'm going to leave those unepoxied because there's enough movement there that sometimes I want to tighten it up where it's pretty good, but I'm going to leave it unepoxied as just a safety factor in case something ever goes wrong. These can be removed quite easily, and they've got really large screws holding them in, which is fine, and then a pin into the boat. So that'll be the only parts I don't put epoxy on. So I'll put those over here. So now I'm on to putting the plywood on, which will complete the seat bottom. I'll get that on, and then I can start building my seat back because the seat back also registers against this plywood and then goes vertical. So that'll be my next step. Well, that completes the assembly of the front seat frame. I'm going to leave the bottom off because that's how I access the cleats that attach to pins in the bottom of the boat to keep it from falling over backwards when someone sits on it. And I'm thinking that's a good idea too, because if that panel ever got wet, and it'll be the panel that gets the wettest, you can take it off and replace it. And then there's a little skirt piece that goes around the back. Down here, there's a skirt piece that goes on that covers up those end frames. When the passengers in the back are sitting, you would be able to see that. Well, there's like a courtesy skirt that goes on there too that I'll leave off. So the upholsterer has some wiggle room on what they do. And then the inside you can see of the cubbyhole, those have been stained, and I will then put sealer and varnish on those before I send it off to the upholsterer so that when you look through the cubbyhole, you'll be able to see a varnished stained surface, which will look really nice. That's the way it was originally. And then those panels come off and on, depending on whether I guess you dropped something back there and can't find it. But they come off. They're upholstered separately so that they can do that. So those don't go back on. I'm going to leave those off and send them off to the upholsterer. I'll attach them, but he'll be able to pull them off, or she, whoever does the work. So I've got the back seat together for the front. And remember, I put stain on the inside of the front seat backs because when the panel is there with the cubby hole in, you can see in. And originally these were stained and varnished, so I'm going to just follow up, and that's what the owners requested as well. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Pettit wood sealer. It's a penetrating sealer that isn't as harsh as epoxy. I notice when I use Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer, it leaves it a little more grainy than I would like, meaning surface-wise, and sometimes it'll muddy the stain, even though I'm using Mike Mayer's Lake Oswego gel stain, which doesn't usually muddy or move when I use epoxy. There's just something about the Smiths that's just a little more unwieldy than I would like. So I found really good luck using Pettit's in past projects. So, and it's made for stain. So that said, so I'm going to put that on the inside of these seat backs, and then that will allow me to put varnish on, and then get that on, and then when I send this off to the upholsterer, it will have a good surface of varnish that, I could always go back in and do more if I needed to, but if I put the varnish on now, it'll help it prevent any sort of scratches from fingers or anything, but also I have to seal the back or the front of the seat back, and I don't want any of that Smiths coming in and getting on fresh stain or even sealer. It'll make a stain in there. So I'll get all this done, and then I'll put tape over that and then seal the front. And I'll have the whole seats sealed, and the backs will be looking really good for the owner. So I'm going to get at it. You might be wondering, what's this gap? Well, we're not sure, but it looks like there was a step in this boat, and that was the step, as I can best recreate it. The owner's not sure that he wants that. So what I've done, I've created not only a step that we can screw in, that the upholsterer can do, I've also made a blank. So if the owner chooses to do just a flat pass through, the upholsterer can just screw that down, and then I've got a couple little things here that they can just glue in, these little tabs here. So that gives the owner some alternatives depending on what he wants to do. Leave that up to them. Now that I've got the rear seat all done and dry fitted, I've taken it apart in preparation for not only putting on Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer, but then following that up with fasteners and epoxy in all the joints. So I'm going to get this done and let this cook overnight, and then tomorrow I'll put it back together. So with the rear seat, bench, and back all dry fitted, everything looks great. I've treated them with Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer, and now I'm ready to put them all back together using silicone bronze fasteners and thickened epoxy. I've already put on the clear or the unthickened epoxy on all surfaces. Make sure that if there's any absorption, it has a layer of epoxy already going in, and then I put my thickened epoxy, which I've done. I've buttered everything up, and now I am ready to put it together. I even test fitted all these again just to make sure that everything is going to go where I want, and then I of course labeled everything just to make sure that I'm getting everything where it belongs. So having all the pre-drilling and testing done really makes things a lot easier. You see the good squeeze out. I'll clean those up in a minute. just putting these on and just trying to get everything buttoned up so I can get this to the upholsterer and have let them get to their job, and I will work on the rest of the boat. So I'm going to get this put together, and then I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like when it's all done. Well, that finishes up fastening and bonding with epoxy the rear bench seat. I will now put this in line for painting tomorrow when the epoxy dries. I'll give it a quick sand, make sure things nice and smooth, and then I'm going to paint the bottom of this red. So when the owner takes it out periodically, it'll be nice finished in red to match the bilge. And I'll also do the back of the seat back to do that too. That's pretty normal to do that. So on to the next project. In addition to the seats being reupholstered and rebuilt, I have to also do the inside side panels. These run along the inside of the boat on starboard and port and give you that finished look against your seats, and it covers up the inner hull, bilge, framework. It's really a nice touch. This is the original. There's two. Um, they survived more than the seats, probably because they were protected by the side decks, kept them protected from the weather for the most part. So it's 1/4 inch plywood. It's in good shape, and I'm going to strip it, keep this pattern intact should the upholsterer and the owner want to go with this again. Um, and I'll keep that for them. And then I will just flip over this very flexible plywood and systematically take out all the tacks, preserving the plywood, and then go ahead and seal that as well. This it's going to be in the weather just as much as the seat, so I have to make sure I have a nice coat of sealer on it to keep it safe. So that's what I'm going to do. Now that I have the inside upholstered side panels stripped and sanded, I'm going to go ahead and put the Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer on and make sure that these 1/4 inch pieces last another 60, 70 years. They did pretty good, I think, because they were under the gunnel and didn't get as much weather, but they are exposed. There's upholstery on top. They will trap moisture and water. So I'm going to go ahead, just like I did with the rest of the seats, and seal them. And they'll be ready to go to the upholsterer and make sure they're safe. Well, that'll wrap up this episode. I've got the bottom of the seats painted bilge red to match the bilge of the boat, and we'll now head off to the upholsterer tomorrow. Got the rear seat back, which will be facing into the bilge, is also red. So glad to have those done. If you're enjoying the video series, please hit the subscribe button. I release my videos every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings. If you're finding the series entertaining or helpful, please hit the like button. It's always nice to receive positive feedback. And as always, if you have any positive comments or questions that are good, please place those below in the comment section. And I will see you in 2 weeks.